Wife is out getting laid right now plus update. Part 1. Never thought I'd be here, but yet here I am. This weekend my wife and our daughter went to visit her mom. I couldn't go because I couldn't get the time off work, and we decided it would just be a girls' weekend for them. I'm a firefighter in a large southern city, and I'm on a call and gearing up when our dispatcher calls in to tell me that there is some emergency. I'm not really needed on the work call, so I get my cell phone and find a bunch of texts from my kid and a couple from a number I don't have in my phone. In the course of about 11 text messages, I learned that my daughter has gone ice skating and fallen and broken her wrist. She's in the emergency room, but cannot get treatment because no one can find my wife. The number that I don't know belongs to a friend of my wife's who has gone to the emergency room to sit with my kid. She was the chaperone for the girls who had gone skating. So I call this friend, and after a lot of hemming and hawing she admits that wifey has gone to dinner with some random guy. Well, we always leave our location shared with the family because of my job. And sure enough, I pull up an address and Google it, and it's a fucking hotel. This was 10 p.m. It's now almost 4 hours later and she hasn't answered my texts, but she did finally call our kid. I have permission and insurance information, and she got a cast and a referral to see an orthopedist when she gets home. The friend took our daughter back to her grandmother's and texted me. She said, "I'm sorry you had to find out this way about _ a guy's name. Apparently it's been going on every time she's gone home that I haven't gone. Meanwhile, I've worked countless hours of overtime to pay off our house, take us a nice vacations, send our daughter to the most expensive private school in our city. I'm a fool." Update. Spoke with a lawyer, as many of you suggested. During that conversation I realized that she doesn't really have a lot of access to money that is hers. Removed her as an authorized user of my credit cards. Put two-factor authentication on just about anything else that she might try to get her hands on. Pulled my credit report to discover that she opened a joint credit card I didn't know about. Since I'm on the account as well, I was able to log in and print out the charges, a basically perfect timeline of restaurants and hotels that she has paid for. Turns out she also has accounts on Tinder and Bumble, which showed up when I combed through the last few phone bills. Have a pal who is a deputy sheriff in these parts who is going to be here tonight when she gets home. I've gotten her a room at a nearby hotel for the week and paid for it up front. She can sleep there for now and figure it out on her own starting tomorrow. Daughter and I spoke and she knows what is up and is angry at mom. So next steps are to find someone for her to talk to. Thanks to my job I've got great insurance, so that is one less thing to worry about. Decided I'm also going to come clean to her mother once wife and daughter are on the plane back here. Taking a couple of days off to deal with this. Thanks for the advice everyone. I'll probably yank these posts down tonight or tomorrow, so if you have any other last minute advice, now is the time. Final update. This will be the final update on this sad situation. First off, thanks to everyone who weighed in. It's amazing the number of fellow firefighters and Leos I've heard from who are in similar situations. I took a few days of personal time away from the job in order to deal with all of this. The STBXW and our daughter returned home late Sunday, and my daughter immediately fled to her room and closed the door. My wife said something along the lines of, "I guess you must be pretty mad at me," and I told her the truth. That I was numb. The anger would come later, and it would be best if she was somewhere else for a while. My friend the deputy sheriff was there and said he would sit on the deck and be there if I needed him. I told the wife that I was recording this conversation to protect me and my rights as a husband and father, and she said fine. I suspected at this point that she really seemed to think that she was going to talk her way out of it. What I didn't tell her was that I'd spent most of the last week talking with friends, my parents, my battalion chief at work, as well as a lawyer and a therapist. I've got a ton of leave and a supportive bunch of coworkers, and if I need to take months off to deal with this, I can. I just said that I was disappointed in her, but mostly I was angry that our daughter got caught in the crossfire of her bad behavior. That she had put our child at risk to get laid. She didn't admit or deny. But then her tone changed and she almost immediately started in on saying things like, "Remember the time we..." Trying to get me to remember good times. After about 3 of those mentions I told her the truth. I couldn't trust my memories because I had no idea what she might have been doing. When that didn't work, she went into the whole "I was lonely because you were working so much" crap. I reminded her that we made a deal about how to pursue a future where we could retire early. I got so mad at this point that I pointed out to her that if she had behaved we could have retired when she was 48 or so, but that I wanted her to remember that promise because now she is going to have to work for herself. I'm not usually a vindictive person, but I like the idea of her having to work until she's 70 years old and being angry every time she gets dressed to go to a job that she hates. Side note. One of my work buddies who is also married, he and his family have vacationed with us a couple of times too, made this observation. Every time we've gone somewhere there has been a day or two where the wife has contrived an excuse to be apart from the family. So I played a hunch and said something like, "This wasn't the first time. This was just the first time you got caught." And she just hung her head and very quietly said yes. So I have that admission on tape. She went to the hotel without objection. She wrote me long emails saying things like, "I'm sorry and I am not sure why I did what I did." I did not reply. Before she even got home, I'd spoken with her mother and told her about the fact that she was at a hotel with another man while her daughter was in the emergency room, and also about the credit card that she opened. Her mother did not say much, but I told her that if I had any inkling that she was aiding and abetting the wife's bad behavior, that I would severely limit her access to her granddaughter. That was probably a mistake on my part, but I was just so fucking angry. The mother-in-law swears that she knew nothing and that she was worried sick that something that happened to my wife when no one could reach her. I also told the mother-in-law that I was not going to allow the wife back into the house if I could do so, and that I expected her to understand that I've never yelled or hit or cheated or done anything else other than the things I promised to do when we got engaged. That seemed to resonate with her. My wife's parents split up when she was in high school because her dad was a serial cheater. So maybe that registered with her mom. I sent a text to the friend who took my daughter to the emergency room. I told her I didn't particularly care if she replied. I said I appreciated her being at the ER with my daughter. But I also said that if she had previous knowledge of where my wife was going, then she should know that she had a huge part in destroying my family. And that a true friend would never encourage shitty behavior. I haven't figured out how to get in touch with her husband yet, but I suspect, based on just sort of reading between the lines, that she and my wife were kind of egging each other on. Thursday morning I got a text from the wife saying that her mother had rented her a furnished apartment pretty close to our house, and that she would like to come and get some personal things on Friday when I went to work. I said that was fine. I should point out that during all of this she only texted our daughter one time, and even in her communications with me, she never even asked about her. When she told me she got the apartment, she didn't ask if our daughter could come visit. I told her that I wasn't working on Friday but that I would be out of the house for a couple of hours so she could get some things. I left. But I had a process server waiting across the street, and when she pulled up in the driveway, he handed her divorce papers. They included a notice from my attorney that I intend to file for sole custody, and that she would have visitation rights. She called my voicemail, and she was almost incoherent with rage. I've never heard her so angry, or frankly, sounding so unbalanced. Also, my lawyer had a very good suggestion that I will pass along for anyone else in this position. I got a new cell phone. I don't carry the phone that has the number the wife knows. I've only given a few people the new number. My lawyer. My sister. My daughter. My boss. A couple of good friends from work. I take a look at the old phone once a day and see if there's anything I need to deal with. I know there's a lot of other advice out there that I did not touch on, but there is no need for a paternity test because my daughter looks exactly like me. I will get an STD panel, but I don't think that's an issue either. My lawyer did get notified that the wife has hired a lawyer. But I made it clear that I'm going to stay in the house and the daughter is going to stay there with me. I may have to write her a large check, thanks to the vagaries of family law, but at this point, I really don't give a damn. I'd probably add a zero to the check if I could get rid of her six. What's something that sucks about being a man? My wife sued for child support, so my salary was garnished under the assumption that I was not responsible enough to make payments on my own. After the automatic deduction, I barely had enough to survive. I did not have enough for my insulin copays, food, rent, travel money, etc., nor the required fee for my domestic violence course. So I made whatever choices I had to try to keep going. Sometimes I went without my medication. At one point I was so broke I couldn't afford to attend the domestic violence course, so I missed one and got kicked out. At my next court appearance, the judge threatened me with jail time if I did not resume, so I stopped taking my medication and started eating one small meal per day to try to keep my blood sugars in a safe range. I sued for visitation rights with my kids and won a couple of hours every other Saturday. Between the time the initial incident took place and the first time after that I saw my baby, he had taken his first steps, had his first birthday, and was speaking his first words. I had missed all of it. Most weeks when I arrived to pick up my kids, my wife would be out. Sometimes she would be pulling out and driving away just as I got there, or she would pretend not to be home, so I didn't get to actually spend much time with my kids, despite the court order. I went to the police station to complain, but they told me to bring it up at our next court date and let it go at that. Once, when I arrived to get the boys, she stood in the doorway screaming profanities at me in front of the neighbors and my children, refusing to let me take them out as planned. She kicked me, and kicked me hard, so I called the police. Several cars arrived, since we already had a history, and despite the fact that there were witnesses, I was told to walk it off and try again the following week. Well, that didn't really work for me the year before, but I did as I was told and left the scene. I am not a poor me kind of guy. I fought this whole charade as hard as I could. I talked to lawyers, joined a men's advocacy support group, told everyone I could about the injustices that were taking place. One lawyer literally said, "I wish you could afford to hire me. I'd love to win this case in court." Eventually, I had my day in court. My lawyer said, "Plead guilty and take the punishment. You cannot win this, and if you plead not guilty and lose, the consequences will be far, far worse." Obviously, this is the greatest news anyone would like to hear from their lawyer. It felt like I went to look in my Christmas stocking, expecting Santa to have left me something nice, but all I saw was a pile of cow shiz. I wrestled hard with the choice, but I eventually took his advice. I pleaded guilty to menacing in the 3rd degree, was mandated to take the domestic violence class for 1 more year, and nothing really changed except that I had to make a couple more court appearances to follow up with my attendance at the class. This woman has completely dragged my life through the mud, and I knew that if I were the woman in the instance, the justice system and court of public opinion would have my back. What I've learned, if a man attacks his female significant other, he has committed an act of domestic violence. As a result, he will go to jail and lose everything. If a woman attacks her male significant other, she is justified because she is defending herself against a person of privilege. As a result, the man will go to jail and lose everything. It sucks to be a man. My wife's obsession with plastic surgery has made me lose attraction for her. I've been married to my wife for 6 years now. When we got married, she said she wanted to do minor cosmetic procedures on her face to help with her insecurities. She had been insecure her whole life, so I was as supportive as I could have been. She got lip filler and Botox on her face. After a few months, she got more lip filler and her lips looked scary to me, but she was very happy with them, so I didn't say anything. Next, she wanted to get her chest done. Again, she was happy with how they turned out, but I thought they looked weird. They were so big and stiff, and my wife is a petite and skinny woman, so it just didn't look proportional to the rest of her body. But again, it made her so happy, so I was fine with it. Last year, she said she was going to get a Brazilian butt lift. This time I actually told her I wasn't going to support her on this one because it's a dangerous procedure. There was a story on the internet that went viral a month or so prior about a woman who died during her BBL procedure. I was scared. I asked her if she could see a therapist or psychiatrist about her body dysmorphia before doing this, but she refused and said it hadn't helped when she tried it before. She said she was doing it with her own money anyway, so I didn't have a say in it. I shut up and took care of her after the procedure. I was so glad she was safe and the procedure went well, but in all honesty, it was horribly done. The doctor made her hips so wide, her thighs and waist were really small, so again, it just didn't look proportional. Now the problem is I genuinely don't find her physically attractive anymore and I don't know what to do about it. I want nothing more than to be madly attracted to her as I was years ago, but everything she has done to her body makes her look slightly terrifying to me. I love her and don't think that will change, but I hate making love with her now. I don't enjoy it, but her intimate drive has increased since the BBL, probably because she's more confident now. Meanwhile, mine has basically tanked. I thought of talking to her, but I'm not sure what good that will do besides make her feel bad. There's nothing that can be done now anyway. She's confident and happy in her body for the first time in her life and I don't want to ruin it. So I obviously won't ever say anything to her about this. I love every other aspect of our relationship, so that's just going to have to be enough. I obviously can't say this to anyone in real life, so here I am. Just wanted to get this out. My mom ran into the room with a baseball bat to find me rubbing one out unclothed. I come from a very religious background. My mother deprived me of the basic pleasures of a 16-year-old boy and strictly forbid me from seeing girls. I was not allowed to have a girlfriend until I was 21 years old. My dad ran away, like the smart man he was. However, he is still a piece of crap for abandoning me. I was never really religious, considering the constant rope I was subject to at the hands of my pastors when I was little, made me lose a lot of my faith. When I reached puberty and my hormones started racing, I discovered jacking it. Best discovery of my life. Sure, my mom literally banned me from speaking to girls, but at least I could get my pleasure out. My mother would go through my phone every 2 days and look for messages to girls, and put me in a very religious, Catholic all-boys school. When I turned 15, she also told me rubbing one out was a sin and forbid me from doing it. I pretended to listen and obey her, but did not. Sadly, she caught me once looking up adult films online, and when she did, she hurt me really badly with her belt and took away my phone. I was now sat there, with nothing, left without my pee-pee in my hand. I never started talking to girls either. I was deprived of my animalistic urge. However, what my mother did not put a stop to my nightly shenanigans. I was able to hide it from her, but I was jacking it. And oh, was I doing it, 3, 4, maybe 5 times a day I would rub one out. Usually to the thought of the cute girl that worked as a cashier, sometimes one of the teachers at school. My deprivation was so bad, I literally nut once to the thought of one my teacher's ankles being exposed. By this point it had been about half a year since my mother caught me and she fully believed I stopped, so she gave me my phone back. Instantly, I went back to watching the good stuff. I became fascinated with intimacy, but knew I could not have any. I looked up ways to enhance my experience of jacking it, and I found my answer. Toys. I found a specific one that caught my eye, called Magic Egg on loverspulse.com. It was perfect, small, sleek and compact, perfect to hide. I ordered it, but had it shipped to my friend's address and told him not to open the package as it is a gift from my mother. When it arrived, I waited till night time to use it. I decided not to rub one out the 3 days previously to when it arrived to build up the sensation. During that night when I used it, I saw the golden gates of heaven open up and Jesus Christ himself took me in under his wing as the nut transcended time and space. I lost control of my body and my vision actually went blank. I shook around my bed and knocked something over, which knocked something else over, making a lot of noise in the night. My mother, being the sane person that she is, sleeps with a baseball bat. Hearing the commotion in my room at 1 a.m., she figured that someone broke into our house and I was fighting the intruder in my room. Makes sense, I suppose, considering I sleep with the windows open and it is a one-story house. Well, she bursts into the room with a baseball bat to find me, unclothed, with a toy on my PP, my legs rattling. She instantly puts the 2 and 2 together, and proceeds to whack my legs with the bat to snap me out of it. The post-nut must have given me some newfound strength, as I was able to put my clothes back on while bobbing and weaving her bat like I was Floyd Mayweather. I ran out of the house and she ran after me, cursing me for defying God. I was able to make it to my friend's house, where he let me in and I explained the situation to him. He agreed to let me stay but almost peed himself laughing at the story I was telling. My roommate's girlfriend never knocks. So, I got my revenge by showing her something she never wanted to see. I've been living with my best friend for 2 years now, and everything has been going great. But recently, my friend got a new girlfriend who's pretty awesome, except for one thing: she refuses to knock before entering a room. Honestly, me and her get along well, and I enjoy having her around. But it really bugs me when she just walks in without warning. Now, to be clear, she's never caught me doing anything weird or embarrassing. I'm usually just relaxing or studying in my room. But on multiple occasions, especially in the morning, she barges in without knocking to ask if I want coffee. And here's the thing: I sleep without any clothes. It makes me really uncomfortable to have someone at the door when I'm vulnerable like that. Up until this one day, I'd always been lucky to be under the covers, so my roommate's girlfriend had never seen anything. I repeatedly told her about how I sleep and how her not knocking puts us both in a potentially awkward situation, but she just laughed it off and said that wouldn't happen. Last week, when she stayed over, I decided to prove my point. I intentionally slept on top of the covers. And guess what? She walked in at 7 in the morning, started talking about coffee, and saw me in my birthday suit. She immediately backed out of the room and didn't talk to me for the rest of the day. Later, my friend confronted me, saying I was totally out of line and even accused me of purposely exposing myself. He tried to use me trying to get his girlfriend to knock as evidence for my wrongdoing and said that I've scared her. Apparently, she also no longer feels comfortable coming over. But the thing is, I no longer felt comfortable being over because of her habits. My friend group is split. Some see my side, but a lot of people are telling me that I'm a creep for doing what I did and that I should have tried harder before going to such extreme measures. Was there anything else I could have done, though? What do you think? Guys who managed to seduce your crush, what did you do? It sounds crazy, but kidnapping. Now I know what you're thinking, but I can assure you it's not what it sounds like. I became fascinated with a girl from my school and fantasized every night about her beautiful body and her deep blue eyes. She never paid much attention to me. I wasn't the weird kid or the outcast, just normal. Well, after daydreaming about it, I had finally had enough. I decided to man up and ask her out. Well, your boy was rejected. I came home in tears and rubbed one out. Felt even worse after. One of the school jocks I was relatively on chill terms with was throwing a party next month and invited me. He told me he knew I liked Stacy and told me he invited her too. I told him she rejected me, to which he replied that's a loser's mentality, and women love persistent men. The party came around and I was nervous. Until I had some whiskey, that is. This school jock actually put me onto a game called Freaky Dice. He told me if I wanted to know he got it from Qturges.com, but that's not important. What's important is me getting alone with Stacy and playing this game. Throw it, whatever intimate forfeit it lands on, you do, simple as. Well, I got Stacy into a room alone with me after the dice game. About 6 of us were playing this game, and one of Stacy's forfeits was to take a drink. I purposely positioned myself closest to the alcohol so I could pour it in for Stacy when it came time. I had substances on me and managed to put some in without anyone noticing. Thankfully nobody noticed, and this thing I put it didn't start working until an hour or so later. I had my chance. I kept close attention onto Stacy, and about 50 minutes later, led her now stumbling and slurred self out of the house and into my car. I drove her home, and before you accuse me, no, I did not rope her. The stuff I gave her was strong and would knock her out till morning. I made her food and a blanket. In the morning when she woke up, I explained to her she got super hammered and couldn't stand up. No taxi was willing to take her, and me and her were the only ones left, so I couldn't leave her in such a state. She thanked me profusely and kissed me on the cheek. She said she's very indebted to me. I slept with over 100 men and women in one night. Back when I was in high school, I was pretty insecure. I was always a pretty chubby girl, and I often struggled when it came to dating. One night I decided I was going to throw a party, and invite everybody in hopes of increasing my social status and perhaps getting lucky and losing my V card. I decided in order for this to be a success, I would need to make it a night to remember. I saw a video on TikTok about these Tabs chocolates that couples take before bedroom activities, and it increases their desire for one another, as well as opens them up to trying new things. I figured it would be worth trying them out for myself one night. I ordered a pack, and once I tried one, the time I had by myself that night was nothing like I had ever experienced. Tears were streaming down my face due to how much pleasure I was feeling. I ordered 20 packets of these on impulse because of how they made me feel at the time. The party rolls round and my box of these are chilling in my kitchen cabinet. Stupid, I know, but I did not expect as many people to turn up. Around 200 people turn up to my house party, and it doesn't take long before they find my box of SX chocolates. They ask me what they are, and I have a genius idea. If I could feed these to as many men as possible, maybe I could get laid. I knew I had to convince them to try the chocolate, so I told them they were infused with THC. Everybody was crowding around thinking they were all going to get baked. What happened was much more surreal than I expected. It didn't take long before the girls started to make out with each other and the tension in the room was escalating. Before I knew it, most people were unclothed, and were all engaging in every sort of activity you could possibly imagine. The place smelled like Afghanistan. Everybody was indulging in one another, even the straightest guys we knew were enjoying one another. I realized there was no time to waste. I ripped my clothes off and jumped right in. I don't remember a lot of it, as it was so surreal. I tasted so many different things, and felt so many different shapes and sizes all at once. I didn't even think I was attracted to girls, but my God, I wanted anything and everything in my mouth. This continued for about 3 hours, before they started to wear off, and people were finally coming to their senses about what had just happened. The guys were regaining their clarity, and awkwardly putting their clothes on, saying nothing, and leaving. I think everybody just wasn't sure what had just happened, but a few of the girls stayed behind for longer and continued to enjoy one another, alongside myself. It was at this moment I really realized my true fantasy is women, because they taste so much better and I feel so much warmer when my face is buried in them. Overall that night I must have done stuff with damn near 130 to 140 people in total. I really wish that night could last forever, but it's no issue, as group chats are being created trying to organize the next event, and most people are texting me asking me for the name of those chocolates. I feel free and I feel liberated. What's the wildest thing you've done when horny? Got aroused about the idea of being a nudist. Went out into the desert, got butt booty naked, and jerked off onto a rock. I stuck my pee-pee in an AC unit's vents. They were spaced far apart so I could fit my junk in there. I was 14. No shame, the breeze was nice. Dude, I once stuck my junk in a banana. When I was like 15 I took a plunger, stuck it to a wall, wrapped the end with plastic wrap, lubed it up with lotion and stuck it up my butt while I beat it like a little monkey. Yay, I dunno. I jerked off when I had poison ivy on my hands and my pee-pee. It felt oddly satisfying. Kinda like how itching is but only while, I was jerking off. Put a Snickers bar in my ex. I really didn't anticipate how quickly it would melt. When I was born my grandma bought me my first stuffed animal, a teddy bear sized off white stuffed elephant which was named Elephant. Elephant was my best friend and I slept with it in my crib. Through the years Elephant had never torn, until I turned 10. I was getting too old for stuffed animals so Elephant resided in the closet. We moved from our house to another when I was around 13, and I found Elephant and put him on the table next to me. Upon inspection of my old friend, I noticed he had a tiny hole where his heart would be. The first thing I thought was immediately I could F the crap out of this. I put him on the nightstand and waited impatiently for the night to come. My room was across the hall from my parents' room, so I knew I had to be very quiet. I got naked and my pee-pee was so hard it could have cut a diamond in an ice storm. I F the crap out of Elephant and busted a nut inside. I put him in the closet where he lived. Every night from then on I'd give Elephant the D. Ida for making a teacher cry after she almost unalived my son. Last Thursday I got a call from my son's school telling me he had suddenly collapsed in class and that I needed to come and collect him. My son has passed out a good few times before, so we've made sure he knows what to do when he starts to feel faint to make sure he doesn't hurt himself. However, when I arrived at the school my son was holding an ice pack to his head. When I asked about it the nurse told me he had hit his head when he fell. The next day I asked him about what happened and what he told me made my blood boil. Apparently when my son had first started to feel like he was going to pass out, he tried to tell his teacher. When he stood up to talk to her he was immediately yelled at to sit back down. The next time he tried to tell her she told him that he didn't look sick so he wasn't allowed to go to the nurse's office. Then, his class was doing an activity that required standing for practically the rest of the lesson. My son yet again told this teacher that he felt like he was going to pass out and she responded by yelling at him, claiming he was just being lazy and was making excuses. My son's friend was getting worried about him so he told the teacher, who then started yelling at his friend, accusing them both of trying to get out of the lesson. Not even a minute later my son passed out and she acted very shocked, as if she hadn't been ignoring him trying to tell her how he felt for the last 5 minutes. I had wanted to go down to the school that day, but my son had stayed off and my wife wasn't home from work yet. The following Monday I arranged an appointment with the principal. After I explained what had happened, he called in my son's teacher, who then tried to deny the fact that he ever told her anything and he had just randomly collapsed. By this point I was pissed. I began to scream at her, yelling about how my son could have gotten hurt. My son has low blood sugar, and when he was young, he once fainted while outdoors and cracked his skull on the concrete. I told her that she was a sick person for endangering my son, and that no responsible adult would act how she did. I was so pissed I hadn't even noticed that she'd started to cry. By that point I was asked to leave by the principal. As of now, I am no longer permitted back onto school property. What's the most dangerous sneaky link experience? I was going into my senior year of high school. I had been going to underground rap shows and house parties for the whole summer. I kept seeing this one stunningly beautiful white girl from across the room nearly every time I went. That told me two things. She was into the same scene and the same music I was into, and she was down for the brown because she was in the middle of North Philly partying with the city kids when I could tell she was clearly a county girl. One night I worked up enough courage to go over and talk to her. My friend had given me lessons and advice on how to secure the W. I implemented the tactics and after that night we started Snapchatting every day. One of those days, about a few weeks later, she sends me a text telling me that she's home alone and that her parents have left to go see a movie with her brother. Coincidentally, I was in the area hanging out with some friends that went to my high school which was out that way. I stopped the conversation going on with my friends and begged my guy James to take me to her house at that very moment. I had to give him $10 for gas but he took me. 20 minutes later we were outside of her house. She had stopped texting me after she sent the address so I let her know we were outside. We sat there for about 5 minutes before James told me to get out so he could go back to our friend's house. I understood so I let him go and made my way to the front door. Just as I was about to ring the doorbell I heard her call my name from around the side of the house. She waved me over and pulled me in through the back door. I asked her why the back door if no one is home and she told me it was because the front door lock is broken. The door is stuck closed and she has nosy neighbors so she didn't want them to get suspicious and tell her parents that there was a guy that came in through the front door. I wanted to tell her that we had been sitting in front of the house for a while anyway but I didn't want to worry her and kill the vibe. Things escalate as soon as we get in the door. She pulled me onto the couch and the next thing I knew, I was shirtless. She paused for a second, took me by the hand, and led me upstairs to her bedroom. Everything was pink. The curtains, the bed sheets, the bed frame, the walls. Everything. It was odd, but I wasn't worried about it at the moment. The next moment I was in my underwear in her bed. The second my pants hit the ground, there was a commotion at the door. She swung to an upright position like she was possessed and shushed me. Downstairs I can hear what I presumed to be her family. She sprang out of bed and rushed to throw her clothes on. She put the sheets over my clothes. I could hear footsteps coming up the stairs. She shoved me in the closet and put her finger over her lips to tell me to be quiet. She did not have to tell me anything. I was barely going to breathe in that closet, let alone make a discernible noise. 2 seconds later, her dad was in the doorframe. They greeted each other and she said, "I thought you guys were going to the movies?" He said, "We were," and then we got a call from the neighbors saying there was a car they didn't recognize that pulled up to the front of the house for a while. "Are you okay?" "Yeah, I'm fine. I've just been in here all day. I didn't see a car." He nodded his head and waddled into the room and checked around a little bit. He walked toward the closet and got about 1 foot away from my face before he turned around and walked toward the door. He told her they were just going to watch a movie downstairs instead now and told her she was welcome to join. She said, "Yeah, sure," and left me in the room. After they left I breathed a sigh of relief. As quietly and as fast as I could I gathered up my stuff and threw my clothes on. I was clipping my belt when I realized I had left my shirt downstairs by the couch. Oh nah. It wasn't the end because I would have to go downstairs to get out anyway, and she had like 3 different living rooms. The one where my shirt wasn't visible from the one with the big TV in it. The only problem was that I would have to complete the mission shirtless. The original fallback plan I had thought out in my head was to pretend that I was her gay best friend. There would be no way to talk myself out of it if I was caught half naked. I gathered myself, took a deep breath and walked toward the door. I cracked it a little bit to see if anyone was in the immediate vicinity. The coast was clear. So I crept out into the upstairs hallway. I closed the door slowly and carefully behind me. When I turned around I froze dead in my tracks. Out of the corner of my eye I could see someone in the room across from her sitting upright. My heart was beating out of my chest. I slowly turned my head. It was her brother. He was playing video games with headphones on. Completely oblivious to my presence. Thank God. I moved slowly toward the staircase, and gently down the stairs like a mouse. The Mission Impossible theme song was on loop in my head. I got to the bottom stair. I could hear the family talking but I couldn't see them. The one right side of the staircase was invisible to them, so I stayed low and crept down that side staying tight to the railing. I got into the living room that was connected to the kitchen. That's where my shirt was. All of a sudden the mom calls for the son to come downstairs. I can hear his dragging footsteps coming down. I ducked behind the sofa so that I wouldn't be seen if he came the same way I did. The only problem was that I could not see him. At that moment the mom walked into the kitchen to microwave popcorn. My stomach was churning while I heard the popping noises. I think the sound of popcorn popping will always induce anxiety for me now. I could hear her grabbing a bowl from the cabinet. I heard her walk away, so I slowly stood up from behind the couch. As I stand up I'm met with a face 6 inches from mine. It's her brother. The little weirdo just stood there the whole time and didn't move. I had my shirt in my hand at this point. He walks away to the TV. We did not exchange words. There was somewhat of a mutual understanding between us at that moment. Seconds later, the whole family comes out of the living room while I have my shirt over my head with my arms through it. It was barely on, but I figured it was good enough. I threw my hips to the side, let my left wrist go limp, and gave the zestiest hey I could possibly muster. The mom broke out into a scream. The dad bolted upstairs. This was my cue to get out of there. I darted for the front door and tried the handle. I had forgotten she said it didn't work earlier. Oh no. The dad's heavy footsteps slammed down the stairs behind. I took off toward the back door. I heard a shotgun cock behind me. I prayed this door would just open easily. It did. I flung it open so hard that I thought I had been shot. I ran for what had to be 2 miles in the first direction I saw before I stopped to make the phone call to my friend to pick me up. My cousin slept with a minor and convinced her to say it was me. 2 months ago a girl messaged me and we started talking. I didn't know who she was because she didn't have a set profile picture, but she said she knew me and didn't want to reveal her identity, so I went along with it. Our conversations were pretty normal and innocent. Things were going fine and I'd felt like I'd found a friend in this girl until my cousin barged into my house and started shouting at me. He punched me in the face and told me that I needed to stay away from his girlfriend. I asked him what the hell he was talking about and he showed me her account. It was the girl I had been messaging. He told me to block her and threatened that if I didn't he'd do much worse the next time he saw me. I ended up blocking her, but 2 weeks after the incident with my cousin, she messages me from a new account, apologizing on my cousin's behalf. I asked her who she was and she told me her name was Rashad and that she was my neighbor's daughter. I immediately blocked her on this new account because I knew the girl next door had just turned 16. It took me a couple minutes to realize that my cousin was dating my 16-year-old neighbor, but when I did I debated on whether I should tell her father or not. I knew this was a stupid idea. My cousin's a dangerous guy, which led me to keep quiet about the entire thing. After I'd put this all in the back of my mind, it would later come to haunt me another 2 weeks later. I was hanging out with a friends as a car pulled up in front of us. I noticed that it was the 16-year-old girl from next door and her father. They'd walked out with 2 other men waiting in the car. Her dad told me to get in the car and told me that if I didn't do it by choice he'd force me in himself, which completely erased any hesitation I had beforehand. I entered the car and we drove far away from home and ended up in the desert. When we arrived, this girl's dad got straight to the point and asked me if I was sleeping with his daughter. I immediately denied it and tried to provide him with the honest truth that the only thing that had ever happened between us was the time we used to send messages on Facebook, but they didn't let me. They began beating me until I passed out, and when I finally woke up I was in the hospital with a few broken bones. My brother told me that our neighbor was accusing me of sleeping with his daughter. Later that day, one of my friends who was close to my cousin told me that the girl's father had a suspicion that she had been seeing someone, and when he kept pressuring her to tell him who the guy was, she ran to my cousin, and he told her to give her dad my name. Today, my brother told me her father is pressing charges against me for having an intimate relationship with a minor, and I worry that this may be my last day before I get arrested.